2:30, the 115 South Main Street, Chatham, Virginia 24541, and roll call, please.
Right, before I do roll call, if everybody can cut their microphones on, that's the only way IT can catch this. Okay. Dr. Miller, he's getting ready to come in. Mr. Davis,
Present.
Mr. Ingram,
Here.
Mr. Spears,
Here.
and I'll also note that we have Mr. Dudley and Mr. Warren in attendance, and we have Mr. Farmer on the phone.
All right, do we have any revisions to the agenda? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
So moved to accept the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, let's go on to item number 5, new business. We go to fiscal year 21 county budget adjustments. That's, I've got you down here as being the briefer, Kim, for everything just about. Come on up.
So Kim's going to come up and give you kind of an update of where we left things from your last meeting last month. We have some better information about revenues coming in and some proposals to move forward with the FY21 budget, Ms. Vanderhyde. You hit that microphone. You didn't bring that little cheat sheet?
I did not, but that's okay. We're gonna just talk about it. How about it? So what I wanted to share with you today is once May ended, I did some calculations on our revenues, and they actually look really good compared to last year, the same time. So real estate, at this time last year, we were at 60% of our budget. This year, we're at 62%. And you would think because of COVID and what we had heard about COVID, that that would be less. And actually, we are 2% higher than where we were this time last year. Personal property was even better than that. Last year, we were at 52%. This year, we're at 55%. So those taxes are coming on in, and we're very excited about that. Sales tax has completely blown us away. We found out today our April sales tax figure. We received $273,000. Last year, for the month of April, we received $211,000. So where we thought we would suffer in sales tax, we have not suffered at all. And actually, at year end this year, that will put us at well over $100,000 more than our budgeted figure for sales tax. Meals tax is the only category that I saw that had suffered in any kind of way. And so that amount was 12%, $12,000 less than it was last year. So last year at this time, we were at 85% of our budgeted revenues for meals tax, and this year we're at 80%, which seems like a really lot, a large amount of money, but it only equates to $12,000 overall. So we've well more than made up for that in our sales tax figure. So we're not going to see any shortfall in revenue at all at June 30. And as such, as we move on to the budget adjustments that we had discussed back last month, I really don't think a lot of those will have to be made at this time. You should have a sheet. Did you all make copies? I didn't make
No, I don't have it.
I don't have it either. I didn't bring it. But in any case, the sheet that you got last month had, we had a group 1 and we had a group 2. So our group 2, we had some items in there like the purchase of jail land, the amount of money that we were going to send to economic development to fund any type of initiatives that we may have there. We've basically just said, why don't we just put a freeze on those, the first couple of months of the new year, but not really adjust our budget in any kind of way. So that's what we've done. We've basically said that we think that that would be the best way to handle those things. On our capital projects, we may put a freeze on those as well. We do have our CARES money, which we'll go over in just a little bit, that will help us with some of those projects that we want to do. So for right now, that group 2 will be in a freeze kind of status. Some of the items that we're able to use CARES money for, we're able to save some of the money for next year's budget. These items will be brought back to you in July for you all to actually amend your 21 budget. But right now, they're just talking points. So we had money in for a PR position. So we're able to fund 6 months of the PR position with our CARES money, as long as those funds are used to notify our citizens of things going on with COVID and that kind of thing. So you do have to directly connect it to COVID. We're able to also make up 50% of the EMS coordinator. That position was also in our budget for FY21. We can also pay for 6 months of that salary as well. So the funds for CARES have to be spent by December 30. One thing that we talked about with our sheriff's office was to include a part-time position that we had moved over to contingency. We're actually gonna put that back into the budget for him. So that was right at $37,000 for that part-time position, and that was part of your budget already. So that's not an increase in any kind of way. We're also gonna cut $70,000 from the sheriff's cars. And the sheriff is aware of that, so that would give him $125,000. But we've discussed it.
He's aware
so we
now. I want to take that for just a minute, because we want you guys to feel good or in agreement with us, or give us your direction today, on moving forward, because the sheriff needs to order some cars. And as you remember, we are recommending a leasing program through Enterprise Rent-A-Car. It will get us a couple dozen cars instead of what we're usually doing, which is buying 5 or 6 or 7. This will be a 5-year commitment. I talked to the sheriff last week. The original proposal, I think, was in at $195,000. I don't really feel comfortable with that number, because it obligates us to $195,000 for 5 successive years, and it takes away all of our capacity to buy other vehicles for the sheriff's office. Philosophically, I've looked at this program. I think the lease program is a super program for our road-going deputies, the ones that are putting the majority of miles on the vehicles, and coincidentally, the cars that are in the most dire need of replacement currently in the sheriff's fleet. So my conversation with the sheriff last week was, let's not commit to more than $125,000 on the lease program, so that next year, when you need 5 of these, or 4 of these, or 6 administrative vehicles, we have the capacity to purchase those. Because frankly, I believe if we lock into $195,000 for 5 years, we're frozen and don't have any more capacity to buy any future vehicles for 5 years, and that would not be a good way of going forward. We've also looked at this lease program for other administrative vehicles throughout the county. I think we can get 10 years off a car. So I don't think for general county administration, and in some degree, general administration in the sheriff's department, the leasing program makes near as much sense as it does for our over-the-road deputies that are working 12-hour shifts in their cars. So what we're recommending, and would like your consent or agreement to move forward with, is let the sheriff, beginning tomorrow, obligate $125,000 to get his vehicles on order through the enterprise lease.
And I think they were the main items that we had discussed that we could do, and changes that we will make. There are some changes to revenues that we will make changes to. You all will also have a public hearing to include the Pcsa budget into the county's budget. That budget is $2.9 million. So because of the amount of that, another public hearing will have to be held next month for the FY21, and we will include all those adjustments that we know of so far. Of course, the ones that are just frozen, we'll just leave those until such time as, we see that it's okay for people to move forward using that money, or if we do need to make adjustment, we can do that later on. Are there questions?
Sheriff wants to speak?
Yeah, Mike?
And I don't know if anybody has seen this document. We went back on the phone with Enterprise once we learned of the changes of the 70,000. Originally, I think we had about 195 in that budget. When we first talked to them, that would give us 33 cars. And we're about 36% of our cars are 150,000 to 225,000 miles. So I mean, the need is justifiable. So we could do 28 cars. We could replace 28 cars at 192 each year. 22 cars at 149 and some change each year, and only 18 cars at 120,000 each year. And I hadn't had a chance to speak to Kim or Mr. Smiddleman. Right now at the comp board, we can bring back, as of today, $228,000 in vacancy savings. And I think our end of year budget, if we're right on this, Kim, going to Kim, we're going to, between the jail and the sheriff's office, we'll be able to return about $200,000 in unobligated monies. If we put those things together and fund maybe 28 cars at 192,000, take those monies to the comp board, because once it comes back to the county, it's the counties, they do with it what they need, out of those two categories. But maybe put that money in capital outlay for next year to cover that cost, to give us some time. We may not need the full 28 units next year. We only may need a half, maybe a half of those. And Enterprise said they would work with us anyway if the county wanted to do. They want to do business with us, of course. So that was just an option if the board chose to do that. But it would obligate that comp board money coming back to maybe the capital outlay line, so we wouldn't have to worry about it. At least next year, we would have that money in play. But I just wanted to bring that up to the board as an option. And listen, if we go with the 120,000 budget, 18 cars, that's very much appreciated. I mean, the cars are beginning to get unsafe, and the maintenance cost continues to go up. But I just wanted to let you know about that, to see if that was an option you could think about. Any questions on it, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Sure, if at 28 cars, what does that break down per car?
The annual budget on the 28 cars would be $192,630, with a maintenance fee of $8,400, and then they put the fuel in that $61,030 for a total budget of $262. But of course, we pay for the fuel out of a different line. I think where we're going to have and it will take a few years for that cost savings to render itself, would be in maintenance and also in the administration of the program. They do that all. They set up all the maintenance, they do the invoicing. If I'm off base here, they just send us a report each month on what it's costing. It doesn't cost us any more money, but it tells us the mileage, the wear and tear on the car, and of course, they're all under warranty. If something should happen, they warranty their vehicles.
Mr. Warren?
Somebody mentioned when they were saying that if we enter the agreement on 18 cars, 28 cars, doesn't matter, we're committed to that same expenditure for 5 years.
years.
That's right.
So I guess my question would be, you said something about 36 units that you need?
Yeah, the original ask was 33. That's what we
33.
identified.
And that was all your vehicles like over 100 and something thousand miles?
Yes.
Or
How many
X
total vehicles
X
do you
number
have
of
in your
years.
fleet?
129. That's counting the jail. Specialty vehicles like our SWAT vehicles and cargo vehicles, trailers.
Sheriff, what kind of cars are these? No,
Well,
Volkswagens are.
No, for the marked cars, it would be the Dodge Chargers. And they tell us they got, I believe it's about a 4-month delay in getting those, which is much quicker, actually, than some of the dealerships. The rest would be, for the investigators, would be whatever was stocked.
So if we were to, hypothetically, we just talk hypothetically, I don't know, I don't have an opinion right now where I come down on it. If we got 18 cars, that's budgeted in our budget, Kim, already. And then this pullback money that we could use to get X number of cars this year.
Probably 8 or 9. If you just bought them outright, at $20,000 each.
You see what I'm trying to get to? Can we get to that 28 number, but not obligate the county under the lease agreement for but 18 cars a year, $120,000?
I don't think they would do 28 cars at
You mean, I mean 18
$120,000.
cars. What I'm saying is, the county's already willing to commit based on what you just said.
125, yeah.
125, yeah.
That's
So-
18 units.
So it's 18 units. The money you're talking about pulling back, putting it in a capital expenditure. If we took that and then turned around and bought new cars with it for the capital expenditure, it still gets you, does it get you close to the 28 number?
No, if we go out, if we just go out to a dealership and buy a car, by the time
On
we,
the state program, right?
right, on state, and by the time we equip it, we've got somewhere around 47.5 in that car, putting the radios in it.
And how much money you
Okay.
got, you think you can pull back?
From the com board,
Yeah.
228,000. And I
So
think,
really, we're talking about 4 cars roughly.
yes.
So we're only up to 22 cars.
And just like Mr. Smithman has identified before, we'll never catch up. We'll never catch up doing that year after year after year, just buying 3 and 4 cars at the time. Because by the time we do that,
I didn't realize your fleet was 129 cars.
Well, like you said, there's also Winnebago, a trailer, there's some other
Right.
things,
Right here.
transport vans. There's some- it seems to me that we would be in a better position to have this conversation if we could figure out a life cycle of the fleet, and assign value to a deputy vehicle versus an admin vehicle versus an investigator vehicle, and place them on some kind of rotation program, and look out over a 10-year period and know that Corey got this car last year, we know it's up in 2027 or whatever because it's admin, and we do a pro forma on the fleet. Because the 32 that the sheriff needs, that's 32 vehicles that are over, I think it was 110,000 miles, and it was a big number. So there's plenty of cars right behind that are gonna need to be replaced within the next year or two. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't, if, let's say we did 20 this year, and then with the vacancy savings money, this year and next year, we buy a bunch of admin vehicles, and then we go back into the lease program for another 20 vehicles. There's gotta be some system that we can devise where we can look forward into our future and understand what this is gonna cost us, and put the sheriff in a place where he knows when his vehicles are gonna be replaced. Because right now, it's literally a year at a time, however many you can get.
Well, the first responding deputies, I'm very interested personally in seeing them get better vehicles. Because you take a vehicle, got 150, 200,000 miles on it, he's coming because I need him.
He might be a second responder then.
Yeah, I don't want the second, I don't have to wait on the
That's
next
right.
guy.
Yeah.
I think one of the selling points too, when they were down, and by the way, Mr. Simon said if you had any questions for him at all, he's out of Chesapeake, he's by the phone. But I think one of the things that really caught our eye was the administrative piece. We don't have to invoice for, nothing will go through our book, so to speak, right, Kim, I mean, when they need maintenance, they will call and they'll say, you go to this shop. They negotiate the price with that shop. We're out of the negotiation business with that shop. They're gonna say, this is what we're gonna pay. If you wanna fix it, you fix it. If you don't, we're gonna take it to another shop.
So currently your costs, maintenance costs are coming out of your yearly budget.
Yes, sir.
Do we
Yes,
have
sir.
an idea what that number is?
Oh, it's a big
Oh, yes,
number.
sir.
It's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
It may be $200,000.
But some of that's gonna continue because if we get, let's say we got 25 vehicles this year, you still got roughly 100 that are cycling that are not
Exactly.
part of the expense. So, I mean, you're never gonna eliminate all the maintenance because
Now, what we
we're never gonna
did,
flow to the right spot.
what we did on the front end before we had our meeting, we identified all the high maintenance vehicles we had. And they're gonna give us a price point. They gave us a price point on what they would buy that vehicle for, right? So it's not we just giving them these cars, they're buying these cars from the county. Some they were very gracious on, some, I think there's some room for negotiations. But we identified the high maintenance cost on those vehicles, and we thought we'll get rid of these first. Because some of the cars we have are still under warranty.
Are these, got a couple questions to finish up, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right. Enterprise that reviewed this, did they get any of the information that Mr. Smithman just questioned? Did they look at what the life cycle was and?
They got it. They have records of the whole fleet
They do.
down to the mile on a certain day.
And Mr. Smithman, just for your information, DSS made the transition certainly on a much smaller scale to the enterprise. So just to get some feedback, Sheriff, you might want to talk to Mr. Spain because I know he did it.
And we talked to some other localities in the state that did that. Not had any issues with them. Good response when you make a phone call to them. They're quick to make a response back to you, answer your phone call, and what your issues are. Very impressive that
Yeah,
they came up.
the business model, I mean, it's quite simple. They're investing their own money and they're getting 4.25% return on it. That's what we're paying for. It's the carrying costs. It's the financing costs. But they're very transparent about it. They make $0 on the vehicles. They make $0 on the maintenance. They make their money on the finance
How
costs.
long can a car, what's the lifespan of a car on a deputy on the road on a 12-hour shift?
Road deputy, 12-hour shift, 4.5 years.
Because I was just doing the math on 129 over 5 years. We need 28, 29 vehicles to keep the fleet rotating every 5 years.
Right.
And that's using all of them.
Right.
That's using all the equipment, everything.
You know, with the civil process men that have to make so many re-trips to make civil process personal services, you could probably drop that down to 3.
This first group of cars, whatever it is your intent to try to put more of them on that, we call them first responder, deputy on the scene, because I know they.
And maybe you're talking about the difference between marked cars and unmarked cars. I would say it's about 30% on the first responder side, and the rest are investigative vehicles, special investigations. I think we've got one of those guys driving a pickup that was actually given to us by the U.S. Marshal Service. And I think that thing has about 210,000 miles on it.
So my idea, respectively, Sheriff, is that the 12-hour shift cars that are running traffic are always in the cycle, always on lease, always moving in and out. And those that are investigative division or administrative division or standards, or those that are unmarked, we own them. And we try to get 7 or 8 years out of those. That's the mentality that I've approached this with, is the ones that get the high cycle, and the service, the paper service, obviously those get a ton of miles. But we're averaging, shockingly, only about, was it 24,000 miles per vehicle? You know, it's not as high as we think, but it's hard miles. I think we all recognize that. And if the hardest miles, because those cars run 12 hours a day when they're running, if we're always moving those out, we know we've always got trustworthy vehicles on the road there, and we're getting more for our money keeping admin vehicles as owned vehicles, which is why for community development administration, buildings and grounds, and all these other places outside of law enforcement, I don't think the lease program will work, because we just don't put that many miles on them, and we can extend their life longer.
What you have too, in some instances, because let's say if an officer goes to a scene of a crash, he can't cut his engine off to leave his emergency equipment on, because it's gonna kill his battery pretty quick. So you have engine hours versus actual hours, mileage. And I forgot what that formula is, but it really adds to it. Our canine units, I mean, when they have their partner with them, they have to continually keep that car running to keep the air conditioning going, and fans in the back for the canine. So you have those engine hours, that's a issue too, but.
Yes, Mr.
Do we have the option to make I mean, I think we all are hearing that we need to get 28 vehicles this year. I mean, I think we all agree to that. Total this year, because you got 32, Scott.
We have 32.
We need to try to get that.
I mean, and just for transparency, in the 32 is the Winnebago. So let's not, believe it's 1-to-1.
Well, anyway, whatever we need. But why, I mean, versus jumping in the whole lake at one time, why couldn't we sign up this year and commit to, that we're gonna do the 18, and we're gonna take some other funds
Yeah.
and buy vehicles to get the sheriff to where he needs to be? Give the chance for the lease program for the sheriff to use it for a year, and we may come back next year and say, hey, we're gonna enter a second 5 years, or whatever it is, to get the cycle right, so we get the other vehicles that are needed to keep your rotation right. How would you feel about that?
I go further as to say, every dollar he brings back from vacancy savings, we buy vehicles with for the foreseeable future.
And just as a comparison, at the 120,000 we have right now in the budget, if we go out and buy marked cars, we can probably buy 4 cars, completely outfitted. That's with the changeover in the radios and.
Versus getting 18?
Yes, yes.
Well, what do you, I'm asking you, what do you think about that theory, that we commit to 120 now,
If we
with
get
the
the 18,
understanding that all the vacancy savings is going toward helping you get to the 28 number this year?
Yeah, so if I understand right, whatever the vacancy savings would be, we could use those funds to buy
As many as you can.
as many as we can, use the 18 to buy marked cars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that,
that's exactly right.
And then we turn around next year, after you've had a year of seeing how this worked, and we got more data, we got, you got a better feeling for how this really fits. And if we see that, if the board sees and you see that, hey, we really probably do need to be 10 more cars or 5 more cars on a lease program, then you got your lease program stacked, so you committed for 5 years.
I'd go further to say, and I hadn't talked to Kim about this, but, Our concern is committing to 195 for 5 years, because that locks us in, and there are unforeseen things in our future. But if we commit, we have 195 in there. What if we commit to the 125 and give him that delta of 70, was it 70 or 75? 70. That's $70,000 delta
To go
toward,
with the pullback.
yeah, and all of a sudden he's at the 300 grand to buy vehicles outside of the lease program.
If this committee was agreeable to that, would that,
I'd dance at your next wedding.
well, I don't know what they go.
But you never seen me dance, you might not.
I don't think
think
Ted
we
wants
wanna
to
see
hear
that.
that.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Mike, let me ask you this, the $228,000 from the vacancy compensation, is that a perpetual?
No, so that's
That's
year to
right,
year.
that's what I thought, that's a number that I'm missing in the whole scheme of things. And if it's not perpetual, that would drive down, that's gonna drive our cost up, you know, so
Kim,
I'm just
help
saying,
me
if it
out
was,
on this. Usually, every year, we're between 125 and 150, and that's because of retirements, people leaving, and that time that we hire somebody for that position. All of that money, is kept in the bank. So I can't ever remember what it was, when it was under $150,000. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
oh, okay.
This year, we just happened to be that much higher
But
because
it's-
we had so many retirements.
But you hadn't seen it ever under 150,000,
No,
you
sir.
know?
Not
Okay.
since I've been dealing with it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, but the way we proposed it, I thought Mr. Davis asked a really good question. We probably should have already brought that out about vacancy savings, because it does change it.
Just a little bit.
But if we, as a board, were to approve the 18, and this year pull 70,000 back to go with his money he can pull back from the comp board, then, and make a commitment that as he goes forward, he can, I mean, look, he pulled it, that comp board money, he kind of dictates what he pulls back for anyway. He's told us before he's got control.
Yeah.
So that point is not on us, but we would only have the county committed to 125,000 for 5 years. We're not committed to any more than
And
that.
the other 70 would go,
Just one time.
okay.
We're committing to that for this year. We may have to do it, but it's a commitment for one budget. And that's the way you understand it, Kim?
I wanna see him dance, Mr. Chair.
No, I don't think we want to do that.
Now, I just want to clarify that. So you're saying if we give them them to take that extra 70,000, that's going to give him up to the 195 that he
For
wants
this year.
for this year, but
But we got, in my opinion, the board, if that's what the committee wants to bring to the board, someone needs to make a motion to say, we're gonna approve the lease of 18 cars, which translates to $120,000.
Yes, sir.
We're also, as part of that motion, gonna allocate an additional $70,000 to be included with the funds that the sheriff pulls back from the comp board to buy additional cars that the county will own for this year. Isn't that right, Kim? Isn't that how we need to do it?
And is it 120 or 125?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Hey, Counselor, how about putting that in the form of a motion, and I will make that motion?
Why don't you just repeat what you said?
I was checking to see if you were listening, Counselor.
I was out getting a notepad.
I thought we said 100.
Then that would leave
70.
75, because we had 195 in the budget. We were cutting it back to 125, but if 18 costs 120, it has 75 left that he could use with his comp board money to buy the cars. Does that make sense? Because the original budget
Can I legally word it for Mr. Davis, Mr. Hunt?
Sure.
The motion is, as I understand Mr. Davis's wishes,
We
that
changed the whole thing. We used
the
it.
county approve the leasing of 18 vehicles for the sheriff's department for the use of marked vehicles, that the additional $75,000 that was budgeted prior to the reduction be allocated back to the sheriff's department along with, or should I say, once his comp board money is pulled back, will also be used to purchase additional cars as the sheriff's department
As they
deems
need.
necessary.
Yep.
You got that put in that motion there, Counselor?
Can I suggest one modification? Instead of saying 18 cars, say as many cars as you can get, up to $125,000.
Wait a minute, we moved to 120. 5,000 was
120.
lost when you left
But
that.
that's fine, but, you know,
There were 18 people.
18 cars, we don't know if it's gonna be 132 or 114.
18 cars instead of, I'll modify the motion instead of saying 18 cars, the sheriff will use up to $125,000. And any amount that is used for leasing will be deducted from the original $195 that was budgeted by the sheriff.
And the difference used for
And
purchase.
the difference will be used for purchase of vehicles once the sheriff has pulled back his comp board money, which will also be used for the purchase of vehicles.
It's very succinct.
Can you repeat that?
Could you
Yeah,
repeat that, please?
We're gonna make
You
the
were
court-
writing.
We're gonna make the court, Kaylin's a court reporter. She's got it written down over there.
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's who I was coming to since I.
So it's been as long as.
Is that
the
okay with
CBS
you, Sheriff?
will
Okay.
That sound right, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those who are against? We have none. Passes unanimous. That'll go
You
through
just
the,
got
to the full board.
$420,000 worth of vehicles.
Get your
That's
dad
some
your
slick
shoes on,
stuff.
Sheriff.
Yes, sir. Mr. Farmer would like to speak to this issue. Go ahead, Mr. Farmer.
This plus something else. First off, I fully support first responders and helping the sheriff out with getting his road deputies better equipment. I would like to recommend if the full board, excuse me, if the committee found it, something they thought was beneficial, was now it seems that we're releasing some funding based on Kim's good news on the taxes coming in hasn't really been suffered like we were expecting. I would like to encourage the committee to release the $230,000 for Cool Branch, the 90 for the ambulance and the 140 on the fire truck. So I think that was in the current budget, what we all approved last spring, so it's going on 10 to 11 months now. But again, I just want to bring that up now that we're releasing the funding. Again, it looks like, it's like the, see if the committee would like to make a motion to get that on the floor.
Well, that's really, it should have been added to the agenda for us to address that at this meeting, but,
Well, I can use this opportunity to report that we do have a meeting a week from yesterday, this coming Monday, with Franklin County, their chairman, public safety director, a district representative about this issue. So there is hopefully resolution in our future.
Yeah, but that money was approved last year. I mean, I don't see why this meeting on Monday deals with money that we've already budgeted for. It's not new money. So I would like to see why can't we go ahead and release it, and then obviously negotiate on Monday, then we can, move it forward. But I think this is money that we said last year we were gonna give these folks.
Well, Ben, this is Vaden. That wasn't on this agenda. If you want to put it on the work session or the board's meeting tonight, that'd be appropriate time to discuss it. Is that okay with you?
Mr. Farmer, having met with
Yes,
those
sir.
folks up there and all, I would be inclined to say that, not to say we shouldn't do what you're saying, but it should be done at a future board meeting and post the meeting with Franklin County. That's been the message we've sent all along, and to do contrary to that, I think would be detrimental to the process.
were there any other issues on this item that we need to address before we move on? Mr. Smithman?
No, sir.
All right, let's go on to B, PCSA Service Contract Amendment.
Well, Kim has mysteriously vanished. And we told you last month, I think it was when we adopted the initial PCSA budget, that it was a placeholder and we would most likely bring amendments to you. We've been working with our auditor to make sure we allocate resources appropriately between the two organizations, and Kim has a proposal this evening to adjust the, what do you call it? The service contract with PCSA to reflect the conversations we've had with our auditor, which basically are just moving around. There's no net change in the amount of money. We're just apportioning it differently between the two organizations. Anything else you'd like to add?
Correct. You did a great job.
There you go.
Could you repeat that, please?
No.
That's what I thought.
But I'll let Kim repeat. So that is on the PCSA board's agenda this evening, which will be the adoption of the PCSA budget. And we will be bringing you back, I think I'm getting there, Ken. We're gonna bring you back adjustments to the FY21 county budget to correspond with the budget that the PCSA board is going to adopt in an hour. I can't imagine saying another thing about that subject.
You'd be great.
Any questions from the board? All right, let's move on to C, financial reporting requirements for county contributions to excess of 5,000, in excess of 5,000.
Let me do it. Since I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
At your board retreat on January 30th, we talked about the principle, the theory of if you receive county money, there should be an amount of transparency in your operations as to how your money is being spent as well as the county's money. So the board adopted by ordinance, in the budget ordinance, that all agencies to which we provide $5,000 or greater contributions, we would request a financial report. We also, at the January 30th retreat, discussed having our volunteer fire and rescue agencies submit to audits. We all recognize that that is a financial burden for them to have to pay for those audits. But we also recognize it's not reasonable financially or practically to audit those agencies annually. So those were the two discussions we had at our board retreat: transparency and auditing of the fire departments. Our proposal this evening is that for every agency to which we provide $5,000 or greater funding, that we request a copy of their IRS 990. You have a copy of one of those in front of you. This is an actual 990 from an actual fire agency in our county that we got off the internet, frankly. But it gives you an idea of what's included in these audits or in these reports. It's not an additional burden for the agencies because they're doing it anyway, but we're going to ask that when they submit their tax information that they likewise submit their 990 to the county. That would also be subject to any external agencies such as Danville, Pittsylvania Community Services, DPCS, or Pcsa. Those are two that, off the top of my head, we give considerable funding to, and we would ask that they submit a 990 annually. And then to satisfy your request about auditing fire departments and rescue squads, what we recommend is that we annually, randomly pick 2 agencies and pay for the audit for those agencies. The county takes on the burden of the cost, and that no agency would be audited more than twice in a 5-year period. So if their name comes out of the hat 3 years in a row, well, they're clear for a while. So we don't want to overdo it, but we also want to emphasize that it's a random process so that everyone stays on the P's and Q's. But those are our recommendations regarding your transparency discussion from the retreat.
Any questions from committee members? Any questions from board members? Warren? Would you like to-
Sorry, yeah. Did I hear you say 2 audits a year? Would you audit 1 EMS service and 1 fire department, or how would you?
Oh, we hadn't thought about that. You've got 11 EMS agencies, or 10 or 11? 11? 11 EMS agencies, 13 fire.
Well, that really,
And some are combined. So if you pick a Blair's, you're getting two
Two at one time.
and one.
does anybody know if they're auditing, having audits done themselves? Certified audit? Somebody
Some
know?
of them, yeah.
It's a question that should be asked, man.
Well, that would be, I mean, that would be a plus for them, because that particular year we pay for the audit.
Mr. Garrett, since you're on that committee, I've been contacted about 2 different departments. And the concern that they had was how deep this audit, or how deep this exposure or transparency would be. And that, from what I understand, is still an ongoing conversation.
Well, I think for most of the commission members, they were on board with this. And in fact, most had no problems with with what they're already reporting in the tax information now as far as the audits. I don't think we had a whole lot of feedback from the commission members on the auditing process. That may be something we still need to discuss. I could be wrong on that. Chris, you want to chime in?
You're right, we did not talk much about the audit process. I'd had one agency contact me back when we talked about audits, and they said, look, we don't mind doing an audit, we just can't afford it. We'll show you whatever you want to see. So, you know, we have not had much discussion.
I think most of them, if they're not paying for it, that'll eliminate a lot of the issues that are going on. But like I said, they're already reporting their finances to the IRS, which is, you can find on the interwebs anyway. So that should not be a problem. That part should not be a problem for anyone, any of the services out there.
What you have in front of you just is a database I went to last night, and it's an IRS database and pulled it all out. So.
Any other questions?
So, you know, what we're looking for is a recommendation, because we want to be transparent with them. Whatever this board wants to do, we want to communicate that to them. And what we're looking for is a recommendation that the 990 suffice as the annual financial report, and that the county, or however you want to say it, that 2 agencies be audited annually.
Ed County costs.
Yes, it county costs, yes.
All right, what's the board's pleasure here?
I couldn't vote yes right now. I've got too many additional questions that, to vote affirmatively,
Mr.
I'd have to get answers
Yes.
to.
As chairman, don't I have the ability to participate with each committee?
You do. You have the ability to break ties for committee votes based on our bylaws.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. My thoughts on it is, we definitely should require the 990. Nobody should have a problem with an audit. As a contributor to many charities, my wife and I'm not gonna give charity contributions without having access to that financial reporting. And I'm not going to have a problem in supporting having the 990 and having an audit done. This is taxpayer dollars, and we're accountable for the taxpayer dollars. And we definitely should require some reporting and some documentation. It shouldn't just be an open book, come get what you want. That's not being good stewards of the money. So for me, I definitely would support the 990. It's not intrusive. It's a form that's available anyway. If you want to access it, this is just giving them the cooperation to bring it in. And having discussed with several fire chiefs that's come in and talked to me since this came up too, Mr. Ingram, there has been some issues over the last 7 years within the department that an audit would have helped them. So I don't have a problem at all with the audit. I do not have any inclination that the county should be involved in knowing who their personal donors are or how much somebody gives. That's a private thing. But as far as the 990, that's a governmental transmitted form and an independent audit done by an outside organization, that shouldn't be a problem, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, that's what I was gonna say. I wanted to, this is kind of a sticky, this is kind of sticky. But, this operation here, on both sides of the fence, so, but the thing I wanna ask the staff is, and council too, is, how public is that information going to be?
Well, it's already public, and we got this straight off the internet, so the information is public.
Yeah, but
Already.
I'm not talking about that particular fund, I'm talking about such
Audits
as
would also be public.
donations from this, that, and the other.
No.
That's not on
Individual-
there.
Individual names, no.
Okay.
It's a copy of the 990.
I got it, I know that, but I'm not gonna take all day to look over an IRS form, I pay people to do
No,
it.
we have no interest in, we have no public interest in knowing who the donors are at all.
Well, that settles one question, but I will put that in the motion, that this particular form, how it was phrased, I will go along with that, so I will put that in the motion.
All right, we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
No.
All right, we have one anti-vote. Okay, I guess the other issue, before we get into the other side of that, the audits, the one thing I want to tell you is, from the Fire and Rescue Commission, I think the concerns that were brought up are they're worried about a loss in funding if their audit shows that they have a whole lot of money. And I tried to eliminate that concern, because we're gonna fund the cost, the money we give them every year is the cost that they have for running their fire departments and their EMS services. That goes directly to those costs. It has nothing to do with how much money those fire departments or emergency services have in the bank, as far as, from my viewpoint. So I don't know how the other board members feel about it, and I don't think the county feels like that's gonna make a difference on how much we fund, and we've tried to fund these agencies more every year. So I don't think that is a concern that needs to be worried about, but I've tried to pass that on to the Fire and Rescue Commission. I think most of those members understand that. So the other side, I guess the other, we're looking at the other motion as well. Did you want to say something, Mr. Smith?
Well, I was gonna say, the purpose of the audit is make sure you have internal controls, that you have separation, between people handling money, people writing checks, and those that are purchasing equipment. It's fiduciary interest. It's not, our interest is only fiduciary. It's not to punish or to,
Penalize.
yeah, that's not the purpose of an audit. We can get all that information off the 990.
Exactly.
That's not the purpose.
All right, well, I guess there was one other motion that possibly could be passed on the audit. Does anyone want to bring that to the,
Actually made that form of motion, audit of the 990 was in one motion.
was it?
That's correct.
Okay, I just heard the 990, okay.
Well, yeah. So we've already voted on it, didn't we?
I just, I didn't hear the wording of annually audit at the county expense. I just heard the 990 requirement, so I could be wrong.
Well, I can put it in a motion. I can put it in a motion that, the audit, is that correct?
2 audits per year among fire and rescue agencies to be paid for by the county agency selected at random.
That's right, one every 5 years, every other.
No more than
No
2
more
every
than-
5 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Would you like to make that motion, Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir.
All right, do we have a second? Second from Dr. Miller. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Anyone against? No, we have one. All right, we'll go forward to the board for approval. Let's go on to item D, because we're running out of time.
Kim's gonna hit that really quick.
So the West Piedmont Workforce Investment Board had some disallowed costs, which means that, this was for a consultant, and the state required that money be paid back to them. This has happened a few times with the WIB. And so this time, our share, which is 33%, is $4,688.02 that we would have to pay. we are fiscal agents for the WIB. So all the monies come to us and we pay all the invoices for them. So we have started getting those amounts from other localities. So we are getting some of those disallowed costs. So we don't pay 100% of it. The total disallowed cost was $14,206.13. So just wanted to make you all aware that that is something that we're gonna have to pay for.
This is something that's been going on, it feels like a year now. This is the second time the WIB's had disallowed calls since just in 3 years, really. I didn't feel comfortable allowing that payment unless you guys knew that the reason we're paying this is because a previous director who has since been removed from their position did not follow proper procurement process to engage a consultant. It could have been, I worked with Pcsa with the WIB for a number of months. This could have been a much more penal assessment. Wanted you to be aware of it before we paid that.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Any questions from other board members?
You say we're paying 4688.02?
468802.
Okay.
All right, let's go on to item E, CRF application update.
So I'm not going to belabor this because we're going to get back together and talk about this more. And you've seen a lot in our correspondence with you about the Coronavirus Relief Fund and how we're administering it. We've probably received maybe 50 applications so far. Wouldn't surprise me if it was 50. And we have an administrative process internally that has a couple steps to approve projects. But those greater than $100,000, we're bringing to you. And the first one so that's the process. It goes through a committee, it goes to the executive team. Technically, I have the final say on whether we go or no go, unless it's over $100,000, and then we're gonna bring it to the finance committee. Well, the first one we're gonna bring you today is a request for $290,000 to outfit several departments with defibrillators on their ambulances. And they're about $35,000 each. There are 3 for the county ambulance. Let me see if I can knock this out real quick. 1 for the county ambulances, 1 for Brosville, Cascade, Callens, Mount Herman, Gretna, Bachelor's Hall, and 640. None of these agencies are currently up to spec with their defibrillators, and this would bring, I think, the entire service up to parity on defibrillators on ambulances. It's a $290,000 expenditure. It's 100% covered by Coronavirus Relief Fund. What we're asking for is, and Chris is here, can talk more, but we're asking for your recommendation to the board to approve a $290,000 grant for defibrillators. Or a grant not to exceed $290,000.
Any questions from
Is it-
committee members? All right, any questions from other board members?
Is that gonna cover what, like 8? Is it like
Yes.
8?
8 defibrillators.
Yeah, I see the
They
math.
have them that are getting ready to have them go out of date.
Uh-huh.
To at least take care of one of them.
Okay.
for them. And I found out today, one of them's probably getting ready to get a grant from the state, first week of July.
Okay.
So
we'll
if-
spread it out even further.
Yeah, if
I got
one
you.
of these agencies, and I think it's Brosville, is successful on an existing grant application, that money would be returned or repurposed. into
Okay,
similar
so that 35 would go
use.
back.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
that's all I need. Thanks.
all right, what's the recommendation of the committee?
I make the motion.
We have
Approve the
a
grant.
motion by Mr. Ingram, do you have a second?
Second?
I'm not on it, but I'll
Second
do
from
it.
Mr. Davis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that was unanimous. All right, let's go ahead for matters from committee members. Anyone have any matters? Mr. Ingram?
Yes, sir. On this CRF, did the sheriff submit any grant request?
Not to date, but the sheriff also has another fund that he's busy applying to. I don't know if that's a state administered
It's,
fund.
through the Department of Justice, the COVID emergency funding program.
So, not only that, there's another coronavirus relief fund that we're trying to access that you'll hear about at the PCSA meeting. So we've got our tentacles out in as many pots as we can get them.
All right, if that's it, let's adjourn. I don't have the